Revelation chapter 18. We've made it there. It's been a long time getting there. We're going to eventually get to chapter 19, which I think is filled with great excitement for the believer. But chapter 18, we still have some things to wrap up. We are interested, I think, right now in our global economy. There's a lot going on when we start talking about global economy. The trade right now is hurt badly, of course, with what Russia's doing, and then what's happening in China. And I was reading today about the food shortages that are going to happen without wheat being able to get out of Ukraine. There could be some really crazy things that are going to happen. We see our stock market. I see the stock market had its 8th straight week of decline, which is the most weeks of decline since all time. You don't even go back to the Great Depression. So we've got interesting things happening. The interest rates are rising. We've already had all this decline, and the interest rates are just beginning to rise. That could be interesting to what's going to happen, right? These are filling our news feeds right now. We turn on the TV, and we see a lot about that. And the economy is struggling. We are dependent on other countries. We had been less dependent on other countries. And we're talking about trying to just become dependent on our country now. But we are, flying in baby formula right now from other countries, Europe, China, wherever they can get it from. And I think one plane is landing in Indiana today at some point in time. They got a countdown for when it's going to land, but none of those bottles of formula will actually end up on any shelves. They're already earmarked for different programs through the government. So we have more that need to get here. When we look at Revelation chapter 18, we're still talking about Mystery Babylon. And I think Mystery Babylon can be broken down into two components very easily. One is the religious component. There's Mystery Babylon, the religion, and we've talked about that in great detail, I think. When we come to chapter 18, now we're going to talk about Mystery Babylon, the economy, the world economy. And it's going to be controlled by the Antichrist. Believe it or not, it will be capitalistic, but it's going to be extremely materialistic. It is going to be everybody going for everything they can possibly get, and they will spare no cost to get there, including murder, and murder by the thousands and tens of thousands, if not millions. Communism will not be there. No one will be interested at that point in time, because communism is supposed to be, doesn't work out this way, but it's supposed to be just spread the wealth with everybody, right? Sounds nice, sounds good, but what ends up happening in those places, if you look over there to Russia and some of the places that have tried it in the past, is all the leaders collect all the money and keep it, and everybody else is poor. They all might be poor at the same level, but all the leaders are extremely rich beyond imagination. Well, luxury is going to be Mystery Babylon. There is going to be luxuries beyond our wildest imaginations, even maybe more so than Solomon from the Old Testament, who is probably the richest man to ever live. But there is going to be a tremendous wealth that will be built into that location. He will establish a kingdom, and it's going to be built upon the knowledge or the idea that we are going to have everything. And maybe with everybody dying around the world, maybe they can collect a lot of wealth for everybody that's left, right? Because there's going to be a lot of people die. So maybe they will collect all the gold and things and get it all into one location, and everybody's going to try to get their part of it. This chapter then gives us the most complete picture of the world economy at that time. But it's also given us a great picture of judgment and destruction. And this is a final dirge, if you will, of the judgment that comes upon the world before Christ comes. The religious system and the economic system have a lot in common. Their name is the same. It's Babylon. They're both controlled by satanic power. They're both under the rule of the Antichrist. They'll be ruling like queens and filled with blasphemy. They will hate the saints and shed their blood. They are associated with the kings of the earth in fornication. Remember, it's not adultery because they're not believers. So it talks about fornication with other gods than our God that we serve. And they'll come under the definitive judgment of God and will be destroyed. Both systems, religious and economic. Commercial Babylon is the Great Babylon and Babylon the Great. Religious Babylon is Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. So very similar in terminology. And that's why some authors, some people that have written about these verses, these chapters, chapter 17, chapter 18, they have said that they're basically the same or they're so intertwined. But I think we can see a very definitive parts: religion and economy. So in order to start talking about this, I think we must talk about the Antichrist. All right, we've been talking about him throughout all this time. He's built this world empire. He's gained the confidence of kings of the world, rulers of the world. He has the aid of Satan, and he has great influence through the demons all over the face of this earth. He's pulled off a world empire in the midst of the worst times. And if you can imagine that, what kind of power does this guy have? This world is literally being transformed before our eyes, or the people's eyes of that time. Mountains are coming down. Seas are turning to blood. Rivers are turning to blood. There's all kinds of craziness going on. And he pulls out a world rule. That's really hard to imagine. It's really hard to believe. This kingdom begins before the terrible bowl judgments start. That's about the time that this final economic kingdom comes into being. So during the trumpet judgments, he's building it. During the seal judgments, he's building it. It's really seal judgments first, then trumpet judgments, right? But just before the bowl judgments then, that's when we get this final economic world empire, if you will. In chapter 18, it is called Babylon. If you look in verse number 2, you'll see that angel cried mightily with a strong voice and is saying, Babylon the Great is falling. So it is called a city. Now, of course, there's arguments amongst different people as to whether it's really the city of Babylon. Is it really there? What's going on? I believe there's really a city there because it says so. If I take it literal, which I try to do when I look at the Bible. Are you okay there, Joan? Okay. If I take a look at it, it does look like it's, a literal city that's there. It seems like a literal city to me. But it also goes deeper than that. It's a godless system, and this city seems to have influence over the whole world. And that's why when we talk about the economy, it's going to go right through, I believe, Babylon. And I believe Satan is going to be there. I believe the Antichrist is going to be there. And I believe that it's going to be the seat of everything he's doing at that time. Now, I know that he sets himself up to be worshipped in the temple, right? And he sets up some idols and some different things. But by this point in time, I think he's transitioned to going between the two. All I can say is that Revelation does not call it a godless or a godless system. It calls it a city here, right? So I think it's there. If God meant for it to be something else, I think he would have revealed that to us. Now, let me give you a couple of reasons why I think there's actually going to be a city, which has to be finished to be rebuilt, right? They've already started rebuilding it at one point in time. And, we were all ready then for the rapture to happen because the city was started. It's kind of fallen into a little bit of ruin, but there's still the foundations of a city to be built there. And I think Satan is just getting ready for these times. I think he can send anybody over there right now to finish building that city, to make it a great city. But there's many Old Testament prophecies about Babylon that have not yet been fulfilled. So if they haven't been fulfilled, then at some point in time, there's got to be a city there for these prophecies to come true. In Isaiah chapter 13, verses 9 through 12, there's talking about a massive slaughter that will be there. Hasn't happened yet. Verse number 1 of Isaiah chapter 13, it tells you it's Babylon. And there's still a slaughter that's going to happen. You can easily see that happen in the tribulation period, right? I mean, everybody's dying during the tribulation period. In Isaiah chapter 47, verse number 1, it says, "Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon." And then in verse 7 it says, "Yet you said," Babylon, "I shall be a queen forever. These things you didn't consider, nor remember the outcome of them. Nor then, hear this, you sensual one, who dwells securely, who says in your heart, I am, and there is no one beside me. I shall not sit as a widow, nor shall I know loss of children." This is a smug statement of confidence. Someone in that city, or the whole city, is going to be saying how great they are. Sounds like the Antichrist to me. And then it says, "But these two things shall come on you suddenly in one day, loss of children and widowhood. They shall come on you in full measure in spite of your many sorceries, in spite of the great power of your spells, and you felt secure in your wickedness and said, no one sees me. Your wisdom and your knowledge they have deluded you, for you have said in your heart, I am, and there is no one beside me. But evil will come on you, which you will not know how to charm away, and disaster will fall on you, for which you cannot atone, and destruction, about which you do not know, will come on you suddenly." What's it say? Well, someone's going to be sitting there, and they're going to be working in all the backgrounds, and they're going to be thinking that they're hidden from everything that's going on. And it says, in one day, this has never happened in Babylon before. In one day, going to become a widow. All the children are going to die. And I think it's in reference to the whole city just being destroyed again. In one day. Hasn't happened. Jeremiah 51 basically tells of the same type of destruction. So I can't say 100% certain, but I believe there needs to be a city during these times. Now, plenty of warnings have come about this city. Before we hit chapter 18, in chapter 14 and verse number 8, if you're there in chapter 18, you can see it. Just turn back a couple chapters, look at what it says. "And there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication." That's an announcement that should get people ready for something to happen. The gospel is being preached by 144,000 people. 2 witnesses have given their lives and died and then rose again from the dead and continued to preach. People have been converted, are now preaching about the gospel. Angels are flying through the mid-heaven, and they're preaching the gospel. In the midst of that, it says, fallen is Babylon the Great. It shows the national and international influence, if you will, of Babylon. If an angel is going to fly through the solar systems, if you will, and yell out that Babylon is fallen, that means they have great power upon the earth at that time, right? Why would any angel go around and say, Cannonsburg is fallen? No one would know what they're talking about, right? Babylon is the center of everything. So when we come to chapter 18, I believe there's a city there, and the judgment falls. Look at what it says. And after these things makes the distinction, I believe, between the religious system and the economic system. So the religious system's destroyed. God has gotten rid of it. Now he's going to talk about the economic side of it. After these things, what happens? I saw another angel come down from heaven. Different angel from the angel in chapter 17. He's a different angel. And by the way, the word is Allion, A-L-L-O-N. And it means another of exactly the same kind. Some commentators, some people write this and say Christ is coming here. It's not Christ. It's another angel, exactly like the angel in chapter 17. So another angel comes down from heaven having great power. Well, if you're going to be in the throne room of God and you're going to be given a task by God, guess what God's going to do? He's going to give you the power to do what's needed. And I would venture to say that even today we should feel the same way. If God has called you to do something, God has gifted you to do something, guess what? He's given you the Holy Spirit and He's empowering you to do what He's asking you to do. You can do it. This angel is the same thing. He's in the throne room of God, and God says, it's time to go. Go. And he comes out of the throne room of God with great power. Because God can do anything He wants to. And I want you to see what kind of power this angel has. Go down to verse 21. I believe this is the same angel in verse 21 of chapter 18. It says, and a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. What kind of power does this angel have? The power to completely demolish a city. Destroy it completely and utterly. And if you can imagine, you know what a millstone is, right? Great big huge stone that they've kind of carved a little bit, and you would throw your grains in there, and by turning it around it would grind that grain up. Now if you can imagine one of those being hung around your neck, taken into the middle of the ocean and thrown overboard. You don't stand a chance of swimming, do you? You're not going to stay afloat. Where are you going to go? Depends on where you're at in the ocean. You might go a mile, 2 miles, 10 miles, all the way down to the bottom of the ocean. Guess what? If that happens to you, you will be remembered no more. No one's going down there to find you. You won't be found. And that's exactly what they're talking about with Babylon here. It's going to be gone, destroyed. It's a lot of power from an angel. Now listen to this. And the earth was lightened with His glory. Remember back to the bowl judgments. And one of the last bowl judgments that we have was total darkness. That's right. Complete darkness on this earth. And I don't know if you've ever been somewhere where the darkness feels like it just weighs upon you. And I know there's poor people that live in Alaska and anywhere far enough north or far enough south that you get to a point of the year where the sun never comes up. And I think sometimes they get going crazy because they never get to see the sun. Then the opposite happens. Then the sun never goes down, and then I can't imagine trying to sleep while the sun's up all the time. I'm just going to stay down closer to the equator. I think I'll be okay there. But this place is being crushed in darkness. The stars that you would expect to see underneath such great darkness are gone. Where'd they go? I don't know. God can do whatever he wants to. Maybe he just shut off the light. Maybe he made them all blow up. I don't know what he did with them all. They're gone. The moon is not reflecting any light. Just kind of a weird thought. We say moonlight. Does moon have any light? It's really just sunlight, right? There's no such thing as moonlight. I don't know why I just thought of that. But in any case, the sun's not showing any light. The moon's not showing any light. It's not reflecting any light. The stars aren't showing any light. It's complete blackness. And by this point in time, I can't imagine that electricity's working or anything like that. It's just dark. People are just probably holed up wherever they're at, and they're just sitting there waiting for something to happen. And then all of a sudden, here comes this angel that has great power, and he is reflecting the glory of God, the Shekinah glory, as he comes shooting through the air. Now, right now, if that happened, we might all be in awe and think, wow, that's pretty amazing. I'm thinking these people should be terrified beyond reason at this point in time. It's total darkness, and all of a sudden here comes a light. And if I were there, I'd be going, oh, now what's going to happen? It seems like they got to be getting there by now, right? They're not. For whatever reason, their heart is so hardened, they're never going to turn to God. And here comes this angel. He fills the sky with his light, which is actually his glory. Everybody on the earth is going to see this, undoubtedly. And then in verse number 2, he cried mightily with a strong voice. So, no matter what's going on, you can't ignore this character. All right, it's completely dark, and all of a sudden here comes all this light. Then he screams somehow, some way, because God has given him the power to do this. He's like an ultra megaphone. And his voice goes all across the whole earth. You're not going to ignore this guy. He's an executor of judgment, illuminating the world, crying out. And what does he say? Exactly the same words that we saw in chapter 14. Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen. When you hear something twice, it's always emphasis is being placed upon it. If you didn't hear me the first time, guess what? Babylon is fallen. It's been destroyed. The statement is a statement of established ruin. This final fall occurs with the seventh bowl judgment. Remember, the seventh bowl has been poured out, and all these things are happening with it. This is just before Christ is returning. And I believe beyond a shadow of a doubt, not only is Babylon fallen, but the whole economic system with it. If you're benefiting any at all from the economy or anything that's going on there, or any of the wealth, or any of the creature comforts, or any of the luxury that's happening, it's being destroyed with this one angel. Go to chapter 16 and look at verse 17. It's the parallel of this. And the seventh angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, "It is done." It's the parallel verse to this. The seventh bowl has been poured. This angel, where was he at? He comes out of the temple of heaven. He comes with a great voice. This angel said, "It is done." What are you saying? Babylon has fallen. It's happened. And then it says, talking about Babylon, and has become the habitation of devils. Why is Babylon being judged? Because it's the habitation of devils. Evil. Nothing good there. Sound a little bit like Sodom and Gomorrah, right? What else about them? It says, and the hold of every foul spirit. You know how many demons and devils have been released upon the earth at this time? I mean, we saw that the pits of hell open up and these crazy flying creatures come out. And we saw these demons that were underneath the river Euphrates. And we've seen, I think, some of the demons that were chained all the way back in Genesis that were having relationships with ladies. I think they're all released and they're all roaming all over the earth. And guess what? Their mainstay is where Satan is at, and I believe that's Babylon. And I believe all these demons are there with them. And they're using it as a headquarters. They're going to and fro, and they're doing all kinds of things for Satan at this time. And they're there. And God is judging them. And look what else it says. When it says, by the way, the hold, it literally means that they're caged there. And he brings it even further and says, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. This is a hovering bird of prey. Now I can't think of their names. One of those vultures. Ever seen a vulture? A buzzard, yeah, same thing. You know when there's something dead in the middle of the woods? Because there's about 20 of them circling up above it, right? Well, it's the same idea. It's a bird of prey. They're scavengers. They're hovering over the city. They're waiting to devour its prey. The final Babylon will be the cage of Satan's winged and unclean spirits. And it explains then why the people were blaspheming God. Because that's what they were doing. They had unclean things on their lips. They were cursing God. They've been blinded by satanic power and demonic deception. Now the people of the time are going to try and gain all of the wealth that's there. It's what they're going to be about. It's what the Antichrist is doing. And this angel, he's going to come and destroy it all. It's going to be gone. For one thing, when the millennial kingdom goes on, it's not going to be about collecting all that wealth anyways. And so when this vial is poured upon the air and this angel comes, I think it's going to destroy much of the wealth of the earth of that time. And what is wealth of the earth at that time? Many people like to collect gold and different things. It's probably going to be wrapped around that kind of stuff. Gold has been a sign of wealth for years and years and years and thousands of years, right? I think it's going to be consumed somehow, some way. Let's have a word of prayer. And we'll have a closing song. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we do just thank you for this time that you've given to us, that we could discuss about this Babylon the Great, this city that I think is going to be there, and then its influence across the whole world. And this economic system that is all going to be pulled into one system that is housed basically in Babylon. And everybody's going to be about consuming the things that Babylon has. And Father, to see this angel at that time to come out of the skies with all that glory and brightness and a loud voice, and how he's just going to completely and utterly destroy Babylon and all the wealth that's there. Going to get rid of much of the reason why the people on this earth are going to be alive at that time, and the only thing they're interested in. It's all going to be consumed by this angel. Father, I pray that we can help and see what it means to us today, that consuming all the things that this world has to offer is just nothing. It's not going to last for eternity. It's not going to give us any kind of eternal satisfaction. It is a moment of satisfaction, if you will, followed by all kinds of hardship usually. We just pray, Lord, that you'll help us to keep our eyes on the prize, which is you, that we'll build ourselves treasures in heaven, and that we'll consume ourselves with being prepared for when Christ returns. Father, we ask these things in your name. Amen. All right.